Hey everyone, so what we're going to do today is take this 40 cal ammo box and turn it into a waste oil slash vegetable oil slash lamp oil burner. Alright, so this box was readily available on Amazon and really easy to use, taking just moments to really cut everything out and do what you need to do. So really easy to use this ammo box for this project. So I get some speed squares, get some lines drawn, get some straight edges, marker, and you'll be set. So here I am marking out the spot where the window's going to go. It's right where the handle is on this box. So I measure it out and I leave it slightly smaller than what the glass size that I'm going to put in there to allow the gasket to fit in and hold everything together. So I take a 3-inch tube and I kind of just dry fit, lining it up. This is not the tube that I'm going to use to go through, but it is the same size that I'm going to use for the 90 that goes through the wall. So I just line it up, see where I want everything to be placed, and contemplate how I want to do the next section. Now on this section here, I had to take metal that I had laying around and create a break to make a square piece of tube to go through. In hindsight, I would have taken a piece of metal that I already had, welded it together, and put a square tube through it. I think it would have worked more efficiently and better, been a little thicker, and then I would have welded it to the box. But working on a budget, working with what I had, this is what I did. So I kind of squared it up, got it ready, and set it in there. And this is me dry fitting, putting it in there just to see how everything's going to fit for size and completion. I take some screws, I put it into the seam of this tube that I had made, and that's just to hold it together a little bit better. I do take a little bit of the furnace cement and put it in there as well into the seam part. That seam also I put on the top side so I don't let the flame directly touch that seam to help with any possible issues that could come through. So get your furnace cement and go ahead and give it a good mix. As it's been sitting a while, you want everything to bind up or bind together for the compounds, and before you start spreading it into the tube or anywhere that you're going to apply this type of stuff. The thicker you put it, the longer it takes to cure. I didn't give it the apt amount of time and had a little bit of issues due to it getting wet before it was fully cured and before I could cure it in the grill to give it that temperature cure that it needs. So I just take a piece of wood and I spread everything in there. Does really well this way, but the seams on the outside where the connects to the box actually ends up being a little thick. So I get my die grinder out, cut some circles into the top for the flange or for the smoke tube that comes out, and just go in circles. You can cut a circle with the die grinder for sure. Put your 3-inch pipe in there, make sure everything fits real good. I end up using the furnace cement to secure it, but later on, due to movement issues and stuff, I ended up welding it, which was a lot better to do that. So here I cut the top open at the smaller than the size glass that I'm going to use to leave a 1/2 inch around the edges to allow my metal piece that's going to go across the gasket to sit on for the window. Of course, I used the pipe for an outline and put that on there before I started cutting the holes so I could get the best fit that I could. Same thing with I didn't cut the squares actually until after I had made this metal tube to go inside, so I'd have the correct exact size of tube. So this next part, I took a piece of the tubing that was on the bottom that is made to go actually into other parts of the tubes. So I cut it, bent it over, put a flange on it, and then stuck it in the bottom. Where there, I could place screws to hold it in place as well, but the flange holds it pretty well, and used a little bit of the furnace cement to put it in there. Now, everything did get wet a little bit, and because I put this stuff on so thick, I think that's part of my other issues that I was having. But the damp wetness before it was fully cured definitely didn't help it. I had to go back through and redo some of it, but this would work putting it in a oven to fully cure it. Worked really well had I not of, one, got it wet, and two, placed it probably so thick on some of the edges. The temperature does get pretty hot in there, so keep that in mind if you're going to go the same type of route, or maybe using a JB Weld that would cure without needing heat. So this is what it looks like at the finished product. I do, like I said, I do go back through and actually end up welding the top smoke vent out, welding it to the tank, and that's a little difficult to do with such thin metal. You're more or less spot welding all the way around to keep it secure and to keep air out more than anything. You're keeping the airlock actually for the smoke to go through. So. And then the back side there, we do put holes to fasten everything to the concrete board to hang it up. Now in this section, I stand in the way a little bit, but this is kind of very crucial that, for myself at least, I took the glass that I had already cut, which I'll show you later, but I took the glass, I set it on top of the gasket and moved the gasket all the way around the door to exactly where it was going to set for the correct length that I was going to want, and used that as a template. The glass is the template of how long and where the gasket would set. Also with the metal brackets where those were going to go for holding the glass to the door. And I'll show that in a little more detail later actually, but this is just me getting that section ready for the next spot, okay? So that's with the glass inside of there. Now, the bolts I put through were, I want to say 14 mil, somewhere in there. But you can use whatever size that you need to that will hold up. I spaced them, just the top and bottoms is all I needed to actually hold enough tension, because the sides were so small, you didn't need that. This, I go on to talk about this heat paint, because this heat paint was $10, and the stuff that's heat paint that they sell in the furnace section is $20. So this stuff works just fine, great. I didn't have any issues with it heating up and being used the way I'm doing it. So definitely saved a few dollars there. And I spray bombed it. Just spray it, paint it, let it dry a little bit. I sprayed it some more and just gave it a good finish all the way around. It's more cosmetic than anything. And you can put some tape or something over the glass so it doesn't get on the glass, but I already had dirty glass, so I was going to clean it later anyhow. These are the bolts that go through the back of the heater box. Now that space is for air, so you want to allow air to be between the cement board and your heater box. It'll keep things cooler and less issues with fire issues, things heating up too much. Okay, so you need that air gap. So that's it bolted to it, going through the top for the bent pipe. This is the glass that I took off the door. So this is the door from an old furnace stove that I had. I reused the brackets actually to you seen earlier to put the glass on. So I just take the die grinder, zip the, well, not zip, but I cut the bolts off, or the rivets that were on there, pull the glass out, clean it up a little bit, and get it ready to actually cut it. I used a glass cutter to start it off with, and I finished it with the die grinder, which I didn't think would work, but I had broken a piece because I didn't score it enough because the stuff is so thick. So I said, well, why not give it a try? And it worked really well. So after scoring it with the glass cutters, just a standard disc, they do sell cutting discs for glass, but I didn't have that. I not even know that was an option actually until after I'd done my project. So I'm just using a straight edge metal here to line up the line and give myself a straight line. And just a standard basic glass cutting tool is all I have here, and a kind of an older one but still sharp enough to cut. And you can use those little, it didn't focus very well, but those little ribs on the ends you can use on other glass to easily pull it down and break the glass off. But this being so thick, I went more of the hand on one side and having the edge, the glass over the edge to break it. I just really believe that was going to be the best solution. If you score it enough and all the way through edge to edge, keep that in mind. You don't get your edges well enough, then they won't break clean. So you can see I broke that little piece there, and so I said, okay, well, we'll just go right on to the next piece, or see if I can cut it with the die grinder and make it a little bit smaller and see what we can get. So I cut this little broken piece off to see if it would even work. And you're just scoring it, just going over the line little by little with the die grinder. You're not just cutting right through and then cutting it all the way down that way. That's not how that would work for this. So here I have the glass already scored with the glass cutter, and I'm making my second attempt using the die grinder. You can see it gets very cherry red, and I'm just making very little scores, getting that edge just so when it breaks, I want it to break clean all the way down. And it heats up really good, and then breaks. So due to the pressure and the scoring that I'd done on both sides, keep that in mind, I scored both sides of this glass. Then I went with the die grinder, which caused it to break and cut through. So the heat transfer from where I was cutting, did that go all the way down it and make that clean cut for me? I'm not completely sure. If you guys know, actually leave a comment in the comment section. Let me know why that worked so well. This is the first time I've ever done this with glass like this, so it was fun, learning experience, and it made the job a lot easier, and just a nice good clean cut all the way down to work with. So here's some of the brackets that I pulled off. I just measure, I take them to kind of do an eye test fit. I was going to use brackets on the side, but after I'd fit everything to it, I realized I didn't even need those. But I cut them and got them ready just in case. And I believe I moved the camera back a little bit more just so you guys could see the top view, see a little more clearly how it would look. And this is where I just took a regular paint. I didn't use like a heat temp paint or anything. I just used a standard paint. I pour it on there, And I know it seems real sloppy and messy, but this board soaks it up pretty good too. So you could just pour it on there and brush it on, and it'll soak in and dry really well. And it still looked really decently. Not that I was worried about cosmetics too much, but it still looked fairly decently. So couldn't find my router. That kind of be the case for a lot of things going on. So I took my drill and drilled a bunch of small holes all the way around the hole size, and then I kind of just took it like a router and used the drill to kind of break the little pieces between each drill bit, right? And so it allowed it to go all the way around. The hole breaks through, giving myself that gap, that space that I needed for the pipe to go through it. And it fits in there pretty easily, pretty well. Now to clear that gap up, I would use the furnace cement. I hadn't done it at the time, but I would use that furnace cement to go around that to keep cold air out. And I used the box on top of the board itself as a template. So I drilled through the metal of the inside of the box, down through the cement board, all in one shot at one time, keeping it as still as I could, so that all the holes would line up perfectly without measuring and doing all that, which you can do. It just ends up being better this way. Then all I did was touch the holes, by the way. I didn't drill all the way through the cement board. And then I see where the drill bit had hit on the bottom there, and I drilled the holes all the way through and finished it up. So I changed my disc to cut the cement board. I used a harder, they cut a little slower, they cut a little thicker. These are nicer discs, but they cost quite a bit. So I used that to cut the square onto the cement board. Now I made this tube to put inside for the oil, and it worked. It did have a leak in the one pinhole inside of on the stuff there. So if you're gonna make something like this, you could use a JB Weld and do it that way. It would probably be less issues with contamination.
Use this for the wick.
These wicks,
all right,
are crap. I'll tell you that right now. I used them. You can see how they work. They seem like they worked pretty well. That you could do really good with this type of cloth wick, and they're meant for like lamps and different things, but they're not a very good quality, and they suck. They seem to work good. You light it up and you get some flame, and it works really well for a few minutes. And it was very frustrating. So I went with a different can and wick later on. So this is me seeing if it was the can that I made the issue, or if it was the wick itself. Or the fluid itself. So I tried different fluids as well, not necessarily the issue. So I went with this Tiki wicks here. Nice, round, good wick. They worked really good. This is one of the cans I took. It's just like a soup can. Okay, I cut it and put it in there. I think I showed some video of that, so we'll get to that in a little bit. I also used lamp oil to see how that would burn, if it burned hotter or better, or if it lasts longer. And I did some tests to see which oil, which canister, and which wick would make the final cut. And I put them on the wood stove and let them burn for I went for probably 3 to 4 hours to see how well everything would burn, how long it took to burn. Now the flames on the Tiki oil get really high. Also with the wick being higher, they get high, but they a lot of soot build up, a lot of smoke. Now this one I'm lighting on the right hand side is vegetable oil, and it will have a lower burning flame, which is kind of what you really want as a heating source. You don't want it too hot, too big, and too much soot. See all that black smoke coming off the top? That's too much. And this wick on the right, you can lower the wick down, and will give you less soot build up, less smoke build up. And that ended up being the winner for the day.
All right, many hours later.
I could use waste oil as well.
Still burning bright.
Something like that. I do have some that I will be doing that with later. But for the can, this is how it was made. So you could take a coffee can, you could take a regular can. I cut the top, and then I cut the excess amount off that would allow it to complete a circle. And I used the lip, the top ledge lip, as a holder for the flat piece of metal that's going to go on top for the lid, where the wick's going to go through. So I made, this is the smaller version that I made. Just, it was a real quick and easy done. And this is the bigger one, which pretty much went the same way. They worked really well. You just want to cut that little extra gap off of there. And that lip gives you just a nice seating placement for a lid, and that you can easily remove it and put it on to add more fluid. So that's the style of wick that I used. You can easily cut those to the lengths that you want as well. Works really well that way. And that's the weld job that I had to end up doing due to the furnace cement not holding up. And in hindsight, I would have went with a tube on the inside. If I would have preferred to use a solid piece of metal that I could have welded to the box versus using the furnace cement. But if you don't have a welder, it can work that way. Now, this is a dampener I made. I thought some of the issues I was having was the air coming in and how much I was losing. I don't think that this was really necessary. Still not convinced that it's helpful at all, actually, but I have it there, so I'm technically using it at the moment in different ranges of trying more air or less air to not choke out the smoke, but yeah. So the temperature when I got started was about 56 degrees when I started warming everything up. This is with a couple of the burners going. I would also prefer to done a couple more cans that I could place a little bit better next to each other and a little higher to the tube, so I could lower the flame just a slight amount more and give it even amount of heat completely down the tube, allowing it to heat up. I took a computer fan, which not very high power on this computer fan. It works for a smaller space, and if you're worried about electricity usage, it would work because of that. I think I would like to have gone up to maybe even a 1 watt, something that ran into 1 or 2 watts worth of energy to allow it to push more airflow through there to heat it up faster and consistently. And it doesn't take long for it to heat up to 300 degrees. It gets a little hotter than that even. And this is what I mean by the soot buildup. You'll get a lot of this buildup if the flames are too high. So if you had an open, I don't know how to put this. So if you're letting a lot of air in through that bottom air intake, which bothers me, so I put a pan underneath, because if that stuff were to fall underneath or through, it'd cause a fire. So didn't like that fact that was happening. But too much soot, too much flame, and too high of a wick will do that. Will build up like this. So this is where I moved it to our room, actually, and installed it through the window there. I put a pan on the bottom through that nut and bolt that was for the dampener, for a catch pan to catch any anything that may or may not fall through that. I did lower the flame slightly, but it still wasn't, I don't believe, enough, because I still had a little bit of soot build up. So that's the bolt right there, the bolt and the nut that holds the pan on. So I could easily remove it if I need to do any work on it, or empty it if something were to fall into it. All right, thank you for watching. So I do a few more temperature collections here. As I'm using it more, I'm going to take some more data, and I'll take more video of the oil that I'm using now, which is vegetable oil. But I'm going to end up going to a waste oil, I believe, due to costs and stuff too. So as this one gets going and I'm using it more, I'll do an update on how well it's working, how efficient, and also the other heaters that we're using, Mr. Buddy heaters, and also a diesel heater. So as we're using those in different applications and stuff, I'm going to take videos and put that together. Hopefully a little maybe more well put together than this one. But if you'd like to see all that other stuff that we got going on, subscribe, like our channel, and we'll keep you updated as life goes on.